They called her the Ghost, not because she was scary, but because she was invisible. In the high-stakes, ego-driven world of St. Jude's Trauma Center, Claire Halloway was a nobody. She was the 32-year-old nurse who wiped up the vomit, took the abuse from arrogant residents, and never, ever raised her voice. The doctors mocked her silence. The other nurses pitied her timidity. They thought she was weak. They thought she was slow. They had no idea that the hands-changing bedpans today had once packed shrapnel wounds inside a burning Black Hawk in Fallujah. They didn't know that their mouse was a sleeping lioness, and they certainly didn't know that a ghost from her past was currently bleeding out in a helicopter 5 minutes away and coming for her. The fluorescent lights of St. Jude's Medical Center in Seattle hummed with a sound that only Claire Halloway seemed to hear. It was a low, electric buzz, a frequency that grated against the base of her skull. Halloway, Bed 4 needs a changing. Now, the command came from Dr. Gregory Alston, the chief surgical resident. Alston was the golden boy of St. Jude's, tall jawline like a comic book hero, and a pedigree that traced back to 3 generations of surgeons. He was brilliant, and he made sure everyone knew it within 5 minutes of meeting him. On it. "Doctor," Claire said, her voice soft, barely carrying over the beep of the cardiac monitors. She moved with a shuffling gait, eyes downcast behind thick-rimmed glasses that constantly slid down her nose. To the staff of Ward 4, Claire was an enigma, but a boring one. She had been hired 6 months ago, filling a gap in the night shift roster. She had no family photos in her locker. She ate lunch alone in her car, a battered 2015 Honda Civic. She never went to happy hour. "I don't know why Barb hired her," whispered Jessica, a younger nurse with bright pink scrubs and a penchant for drama, leaning over the nurse's station counter. "She freezes up every time a trauma comes in. Have you seen her? She just stands there in the back." "She's a space cadet," Alston laughed, signing a chart without looking up. "Some people are cut out for this life, and some people are meant to work in geriatrics wiping chins. Halloway is definitely the latter. Just keep her out of my way during the heavy stuff." Claire heard them. She always heard them. Her hearing had been tuned in environments far louder and more hostile than a hospital corridor. She didn't react. She simply walked into Bed 4, where an elderly man named Mr. Henderson was groaning in discomfort. With efficient, gentle hands, she adjusted his pillows and checked his IV line. Her fingers moved with a dexterity that contradicted her shuffling walk. She noticed the slight distension in his abdomen, subtle, something the rounding doctors had missed 10 minutes ago. She checked his chart. Post-op appendectomy. Routine, but the distension wasn't routine. She placed a hand on his stomach, feeling the rigidity. "Mr. Henderson, does this hurt?" she asked softly. Yes. Sharp." He wheezed. Claire walked back to the station. "Doctor, Alston." Alston rolled his eyes, checking his Rolex. "What is it? Halloway, I'm due in the OR in 20. Mr. Henderson in Bed 4. He has abdominal guarding and his heart rate has ticked up 10 beats in the last hour. I think he might be bleeding internally. You should scan him." Alston scoffed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "I checked Henderson myself 20 minutes ago. He's fine. It's gas. Give him a simethicone and stop wasting my time looking for glory." "Doctor, the rigidity is specific to the right lower quadrant, but deep. It could be a nicked artery from the—" "Enough." Alston slammed the chart down. The noise silenced the nearby hallway. "You change the sheets. Holloway. I make the diagnoses. Do your job, or I'll find someone who can—" Claire looked at him. For a split second less than a heartbeat, her eyes hardened. The dull, watery blue seemed to sharpen into steel, but just as quickly, she blinked, and the mouse returned. "Understood, Doctor," she whispered. She went back to bed 4. She didn't give the simethicone. Instead, she accidentally tripped the sensor on the blood pressure monitor, forcing it to take a reading every 2 minutes instead of every hour. 10 minutes later. "Mister." Henderson's pressure plummeted. The alarm shrieked. Alston rushed in, panic flashing in his eyes. "BP is crashing. What the hell happened? Get him to CT! Stat! He's bleeding out!" As they wheeled the gurney past Claire, Alston shouted, "Why didn't anyone monitor this patient?" Claire stood against the wall, fading into the background. She had saved the man's life by forcing the machine to reveal what Alston's ego had ignored. But she wouldn't get the credit. She didn't want it. Credit meant attention. Attention meant questions. And questions were dangerous for a woman trying to forget the smell of burning diesel and copper. 3 weeks later, a storm battered the Seattle coastline. Rain lashed against the glass walls of the ER waiting room, a rhythmic drumming that usually soothed Claire. But tonight, the air felt heavy. The barometric pressure was dropping, and the ER was overflowing with car accidents and slip and falls. Head nurse Barbara Miller, a formidable woman in her 50s with hair like iron wool, marched into the break room. "Listen up. People clear the trauma bay. We have an inbound transfer. High priority." "Another drunk driver?" Jessica asked, scrolling on her phone. "No," Barbara said, her voice unusually tight. "This is coming from a private airfield, military contractor. High-level clearance required just to look at the chart. Administration is freaking out. They want the A-team on this." She pointed a finger around the room. "Alston, you're laid. Jessica, get the rapid infuser. Mike, respiratory." She looked at Claire, who was slowly chewing a bagel in the corner. "Holloway, you stay on overflow. Handle the minor lacerations. I don't want any hesitation on this one. And you tend to freeze." "Okay. Barb," Claire said. "It's Barbara." The older nurse snapped. "Move." The team scrambled. Claire slowly cleaned up her crumbs. As she walked toward the waste bin, a sound cut through the noise of the hospital. It wasn't the ambulance siren. It was a deep, thumping whop 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 vibrating through the roof structure. Claire stopped. Her hand hovered over the trash can. That wasn't the standard medevac chopper. The Eurocopter EC-135 used by the local hospitals. That engine note was heavier, deeper. It was the sound of a 4-bladed rotor system slicing through heavy air. Sikorsky SH-60 Seahawk, or maybe a Pave Hawk. Her heart hammered against her ribs, thump, 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 syncing with the rotors. For a second, the break room dissolved. She wasn't in Seattle. She was in the back of a dusty bird, knees deep in gauze, screaming for a tourniquet while tracers zipped past the open door. "Stay with me, Marine. Stay with me. Claire." She snapped back. Jessica was waving a hand in front of her face. "Earth to Holloway. Can you move? You're blocking the saline supply." "Sorry," Claire mumbled. Stepping aside, her hands were trembling. She clenched them into fists and shoved them into her scrub pockets. "Just a transfer," she told herself. "Just a contractor. Probably some PMC guy with a broken leg. But the atmosphere in the trauma bay suggested otherwise." 2 men in dark suits and earpieces had appeared at the entrance, blocking anyone without a specific badge. "Doctor." Alston was preening, checking his reflection in the glass cabinet doors. This was the kind of patient that made careers or ended them. The double doors burst open. The gurney didn't come from an ambulance. It came from the roof elevator. The paramedics pushing it weren't wearing standard EMT uniforms. They wore tactical flight suits, olive drab, with no patches. "Male, 38 years old," the lead medic shouted, sweat dripping down his face. "Multiple shrapnel wounds to the thoracic cavity. Sustained 3 days ago in an undisclosed location. Post-surgical complications. He's septic, and he's throwing clots. We lost his pulse twice on the flight." Alston stepped forward, authoritative. "Get him on the monitor. I want a CBC, Chem 7 and cross-match. Let's see what we're dealing with." They transferred the man to the trauma bed. He was massive, easily 6'4", built like a tank, but pale as a sheet. His body was a map of scars, old and new. Claire was supposed to be in the overflow rooms. She was supposed to be stitching up a teenager's cut finger, but the magnetic pull of the trauma room was too strong. She stood just outside the glass sliding door, watching. She saw the patient's face. He had a thick beard, now matted with sweat and vomit. His eyes were squeezed shut in agony, but on his right deltoid, exposed where they had cut his shirt, was a tattoo. It wasn't just a generic skull or eagle. It was a trident, and wrapped around the trident was a very specific, jagged line of text in Latin. Non sibi sed patriae, but it was the scar running through the tattoo that stopped Claire's heart. A burn scar, shaped like a starburst. She knew that scar. She had stitched the skin around it 5 years ago in a blown-out safe house in Kandahar. The patient wasn't just a contractor. It was Jack O'Connell, call sign Reaper, the team leader of Devgru Red Squadron. The man who had once carried Claire 2 miles on a shattered ankle because she refused to leave a wounded dog behind. He was dying. And Alston was about to kill him. "He's in V-fib," Jessica screamed. "No pulse. Clear." Alston charged the paddles. Shocking. The body jumped. "Nothing." Jessica yelled. "Again, charge to 200. Alston yelled. "Wait!" the flight medic shouted. "You can't just shock him. He has I am the attending physician here." Alston roared. "Clear. Thump. Still no pulse." "Intubate," Alston ordered. "Push 1 milligram epi." Claire watched through the glass. She saw the way Jack's chest was rising unevenly. She saw the jugular vein distension. "It's not cardiac arrest," she thought, her mind racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. "It's a tension pneumothorax complicated by a pericardial tamponade. The shrapnel migrated. If they intubate him, the positive pressure will kill him instantly." Alston held the laryngoscope, tube in hand. Claire didn't think. She didn't check her badge. She didn't care about the dark suits, or the protocol, or the fact that she was just the mouse. She hit the door release and sprinted into the room. "Don't intubate!" she screamed, her voice cracking with a command authority that no one in that hospital had ever heard. Alston froze, the blade inches from Jack's lips. He looked up, furious. "Get the hell out of here. Holloway security. If you intubate him, you kill him." Claire didn't stop. She pushed past Jessica. "Look at the jugular. Look at the paradoxical movement. He has a tamponade. The heart can't beat because it's drowning in blood. You need to aspirate the pericardium. Now." "You are a nurse," Alston spat, his face turning purple. "And a bad one at that. Get out before I have you arrested." "He's right." Barbara grabbed Claire's arm, pulling her back hard. "Claire, have you lost your mind? Get out." The monitor let out a long, solid tone. "Beep." "We lost him," Jessica whispered. "No," Claire growled. She ripped her arm free from Barbara with a move that sent the head nurse stumbling back into a cart. It was a CQC close-quarters combat break, fast, violent, and efficient. Claire grabbed a 16-gauge spinal needle from the sterile tray. "Holloway, put that down." Alston lunged at her. Claire didn't look at him. She dropped her shoulder, checking him hard into the IV pole. He went down with a crash. The room went silent. The mouse had just taken out the chief resident. Claire leaned over Jack's massive chest. She didn't hesitate. She located the xiphoid process, angled the needle 45 degrees, and plunged it deep into his chest, aiming for the left shoulder. "She's stabbing him!" Jessica screamed. Claire pulled back on the plunger. The room held its breath. Slowly, dark, almost black blood filled the syringe, and then, beep! 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 The monitor picked up a rhythm. Weak. But there. Jack O'Connell's eyes fluttered open. He gasped, a massive intake of air, his eyes darting wildly around the room until they locked onto the woman in the oversized scrubs and glasses. He blinked, trying to focus through the pain. "Mouse," he croaked, his voice like gravel. "That." Claire's hands, steady as a rock while she held the needle, finally began to shake. "I got you. Reaper, I got you." Alston scrambled to his feet, red-faced and humiliated. "Security. Get this lunatic away from the patient. She assaulted me." 2 security guards rushed in. "Don't touch her," Jack wheezed, trying to sit up. "You touch her, I kill you." But Jack was too weak. He slumped back. The guards grabbed Claire, twisting her arms behind her back. "You're fired, Holloway," Alston hissed, straightening his lab coat. "And you're going to prison." At that moment, the double doors flew open again. But this time, it wasn't flight medics. 4 men in full Navy dress blues walked in, led by a 2-star admiral. The aura of power they projected sucked the air out of the room. "Admiral on deck!" one of the flight medics shouted, snapping to attention. "Doctor!" Alston stepped forward, composing himself. "Admiral, I am Dr. Alston. I've stabilized the patient. But we had a security incident with a deranged member of the nursing staff. We are handling it." The Admiral, a man named Owen Hayes, didn't even look at Alston. He walked straight past the doctor, past the stunned nurses, and stopped in front of Claire, who was currently being handcuffed by the security guards. Hayes looked at the guards. "Release her." "Sir." "She—" The guard started. "I said, release my corpsman," Hayes said, his voice quiet and terrifying. The guards let go. Claire rubbed her wrists, looking down at her shoes. Admiral Hayes stood at attention. Slowly, he raised his hand and rendered a crisp, perfect salute. "Hospital Corpsman, First Class, Holloway," the Admiral said. "It's been a long time. We need to talk." The silence in Trauma Bay 1 was heavier than lead. The beep of the heart monitor was the only thing keeping the room tethered to reality. Doctor, Gregory Alston, usually the loudest voice in any room, stood with his mouth slightly agape, looking from the 2-star admiral to the woman he had sent to change bedpans for 6 months. Claire Holloway stood frozen. The adrenaline that had driven her to stab a needle into a man's chest was fading, replaced by the familiar, cold dread of exposure. She pulled her wrists away from the confused security guards and adjusted her glasses. They were smudged, She hated when they were smudged. "Admiral," Claire said, her voice cracking before she cleared it. She straightened her spine, the slouch of the mouse vanishing. "Sir, patient is stabilized, but the pericardial drain is a temporary fix. He needs a thoracotomy to repair the lacerated vessel. He has shrapnel near the aortic arch." Alston found his voice. "Now wait just a minute. You can't just Admiral or not. This is my trauma bay. This woman is a nurse who just assaulted a physician. She is not qualified to make surgical assessments." Admiral Hayes turned slowly. He was a man carved from granite, with eyes that had seen things that would make Alston weep. "Dr. Alston, is it?" Hayes asked. "The woman you are attempting to arrest is a former independent duty corpsman with the Special Amphibious Reconnaissance Corps. She has performed more field surgeries in the back of a moving, vibrating helicopter under enemy fire than you have performed in this sterile, air-conditioned theater in your entire career." Hayes stepped closer to Alston, invading his personal space. "She is the only reason Chief O'Connell is alive right now. If you had intubated him with that tension pneumothorax, you would have killed a national asset. So, I suggest you step back and let the expert work." Alston turned a shade of pale, usually reserved for corpses. He looked at Barbara, the head nurse, for support, but Barbara was staring at Claire with a mixture of horror and awe. "Claire," Barbara whispered. "Is this true?" Claire didn't look at her. She was looking at the monitor. "BP is 90/60, climbing, heart rate stabilizing at 110. Jack, Chief O'Connell is waking up further. We need to move him. He won't be safe here." "Safe," Alston scoffed, trying to regain some ground. "This is a hospital. Holloway. It's the safest place in the city." "Not for him," Claire said darkly. She turned to the Admiral. "Sir, did you secure the perimeter?" 2 teams of Masters-at-Arms are securing the ICU floor as we speak," Hayes confirmed. "We have a dedicated surgical team flying in from Balboa, but they are 20 minutes out. We need to hold him until then." "I'll scrub in," Claire said. "You can't scrub in," Alston shouted. "You are not a surgeon. You don't have privileges. I am authorizing her privileges under the Patriot Act and immediate military necessity," Hayes barked. "Now, get this man to the elevator." The scene dissolved into chaos, but this time, it was controlled chaos. The Navy flight medics pushed the gurney. Claire ran alongside them, her hand gripping Jack's shoulder. "Stay with me. Jack," she whispered. Jack O'Connell, groggy and in agony, managed a weak grin. "You, still bossy." "Holloway." "Shut up and bleed less," she replied. As they burst out of the trauma bay, the entire ER staff was watching. Jessica. The nurse who had mocked Claire for being slow stood with a tray of meds, her jaw on the floor. The mouse was barking orders at a 2-star admiral, and the admiral was listening. "Jessica," Claire shouted as she passed. Jessica jumped. Yes. Grab 2 units of O negative and a rapid infuser. Meet us in OR3. Move. On it!" Jessica sprinted, terrified and exhilarated. Alston was left standing alone in the empty trauma bay. The floor was slick with blood that Claire had saved. He clenched his fists, his ego bruising more painfully than his body where Claire had checked him. "This isn't over," he muttered to the empty room. "No one humiliates me in my own hospital. No one." He marched to the nurse's station and grabbed the phone. "Get me risk management, and get me the chief of medicine. I want Claire Holloway's file, and I want it now. I'm going to bury her." The operating room was quiet, save for the rhythmic swoosh of the ventilator. The Navy surgical team had arrived in record time, relieving Claire of the scalpel, but she refused to leave the room. She stood in the corner, arms crossed, still wearing her blood-splattered scrubs. Jack was under. The surgery had been successful. The shrapnel was gone. Admiral Hayes stood next to her. For a long time, neither of them spoke. "You disappeared, Claire," Hayes said softly. 5 years. No note. No forwarding address. Just a resignation letter on my desk and a ghost in the wind. Claire watched the rise and fall of Jack's chest. "I was done. Owen, you know why. Because of Miller." Claire flinched. The name hit her like a physical blow. Miller, the kid, 19 years old. "I promised his mother I'd bring him home," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. "And I brought him home in a bag because I couldn't stop the bleeding." I hesitated. Just for a second. But a second is a lifetime out there. "It was an RPG. Claire," Hayes said firmly. "He took a direct hit. God himself couldn't have saved that boy. You saved the other 6 men in that Humvee. You saved Jack that day, too." "Does Jack know?" she asked. "Does he know I'm here?" "He suspected. He's been looking for you." Claire looked at the Admiral, shocked. "Looking for me? Why?" "Because he's in trouble. Claire, real trouble. This wasn't a training accident." Hayes gestured to the door. They stepped out into the scrub room. He lowered his voice. Jack was running an off-the-books recon operation in the South China Sea. He found something he wasn't supposed to see. Evidence of a new bioweapon program being sold to insurgents. He secured the data, but his team was compromised. They were ambushed at the extract. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. The shrapnel? It wasn't just metal? No. Hayes shook his head. It was coated. We think it's a slow-acting neurotoxin. But his blood work is chaotic. We needed him at a level 1 trauma center with a secure perimeter. But we specifically came here because our intel suggested you were hiding in Seattle. "You used him as bait to find me?" Claire asked, anger flaring. "No. We came to you because you're the only one who knows the counter-protocol for this specific toxin class. You wrote the paper on it at Bethesda in 2018. Claire closed her eyes. Project Chimera. She had written a theoretical paper on neurotoxic shrapnel treatments. She never thought it would be real. "He has about 12 hours before the residual toxin shuts down his central nervous system," Hayes said. "The Navy doctors can fix the holes, but they don't know the chemistry. You do. I'm just a nurse now. Owen, I change bedpans." "Not today," Hayes said. "Today, you're the only thing standing between Jack O'Connell and a flag-draped coffin." Suddenly, the door to the scrub room flew open. It was Dr. Alston, accompanied by 2 suits from hospital administration and a very nervous-looking hospital lawyer. "There she is." Alston pointed a finger at Claire. "That's the woman. I want her removed from the premises immediately." The lawyer, a balding man named Mr. Henderson, no relation to the patient Claire saved earlier, stepped forward. "Ms. Holloway, doctor, Alston has filed a formal complaint regarding physical assault and practicing medicine without a license. Given the liability, we have to ask you to vacate the hospital immediately pending an investigation." Hayes stepped in front of Claire. "This woman is under the protection of the United States Navy. She is not going anywhere." "With all due respect, Admiral," Alston sneered, feeling brave with the lawyers behind him. "This is a civilian hospital. Your jurisdiction ends at the door. Unless you plan on declaring martial law, You cannot force us to employ a violent staff member. Alston smiled, a smug, oily grin. He held up a file folder. Besides, I took the liberty of looking into Ms. Halloway's background check. It seems she lied on her application. She omitted her entire military service history. That is grounds for immediate termination. Claire looked at Alston. She didn't feel fear anymore. She felt a cold, simmering rage. I omitted it because it's classified. You idiot, she said quietly. Excuse me, Alston bristled. You're checking a sanitized file, Claire said. Stepping around Hayes. If you tried to access my actual service record, you would have triggered a silent alarm at the Pentagon, which, she glanced at the Admiral, is probably why the Admiral's phone is vibrating right now. Hayes checked his phone. He smirked. She's right. NSA just pinged an unauthorized access attempt from this IP address. Alston's face fell. However, the lawyer interrupted, sweating. The liability remains. If she touches a patient, we can be sued. She has to go. Claire looked at the recovery room window. Jack was in there, dying slowly from a poison only she understood. Fine, Claire said, taking off her stethoscope and dropping it on the floor. I'm fired. I'm a civilian. She turned to Hayes. Admiral, I'd like to reactivate my commission, effective immediately. Hayes didn't hesitate. Request granted. Welcome back. Senior Chief. Claire turned back to Alston, a wolfish smile finally breaking through her mouse-like demeanor. I'm not a hospital employee anymore. Doctor, I'm military personnel attached to a high-value asset, and under Article 104 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, interfering with a medical operation in a combat zone, which I am declaring this room to be, is a court-martial offense. She stepped close to Alston, so close he could smell the antiseptic soap on her skin. So, get out of my way, or I will break your other arm. Alston scrambled back. The lawyers looked at each other and fled. Night had fallen over Seattle. The storm outside had intensified, thunder rattling the windows of the ICU. Inside Jack's room, the atmosphere was tense. Claire had set up a makeshift lab in the corner. She was mixing a cocktail of atropine, pralidoxim, and a synthesized binder she had requested from the Navy med kit. Jack was awake. He was pale, sweating profusely, his hands trembling. You still have the touch. Mouse, he grunted. Save your energy. Jack, Claire said, focusing on the titration. The toxin is binding to your acetylcholine receptors. If I don't get this ratio right, your heart stops. They followed me, Jack whispered. Claire paused. Who? The syndicate. The ones selling the weapon. They don't leave loose ends. The hospital is locked down. Jack, we have SEALs in the lobby and MPs on the roof. Not enough, Jack coughed, a spasm of pain racking his body. Inside. Claire's heart skipped a beat. Inside. She looked at the monitors. Everything seemed normal. But then she noticed something. The security feed on the monitor in the corner, the one showing the hallway outside, was looping. She saw the same nurse walk past the water cooler 3 times in the last minute. Admiral Knapp. Claire tapped her comms earpiece she had been given. Hayes, check the cameras on the 4th floor. The feed is looped. Static. Admiral. Nothing. The lights in the room flickered. Then they died. The hospital plunged into darkness. The emergency red lights bathed the room in a bloody glow. The hum of the ventilators stopped, replaced by the frantic beeping of battery backups. Code black, Jack wheezed. trying to reach for the pistol that wasn't there. Power cut! Claire didn't panic. The mouse was gone. The ghost was back. She moved to the door, locking it manually. She grabbed a heavy oxygen tank from the corner. "Jack, listen to me," she said, her voice low and steady. "I need to manually vent your IV line so the pressure doesn't back up." "Don't move. Behind you," Jack gasped. Claire spun around. The ventilation grunt in the ceiling above the bathroom was open. A shadow dropped silently into the room. It was a man dressed in black scrubs, face covered by a surgical mask, but his movement was wrong, too fluid, too predatory. In his hand, a suppressed pistol. He raised the weapon toward the bed. Claire didn't scream. She didn't freeze. She hurled the oxygen tank. It was a clumsy throw, but heavy. The tank smashed into the assassin's arm just as he fired. Phut! The bullet went wide, shattering the glass of the medicine cabinet. The assassin grunted, turning his aim toward Claire. Claire dropped to the floor, sliding under the bed, just as another shot sparked off the metal frame. She scrambled out the other side, grabbing a scalpel from the bedside tray. The assassin rounded the bed, gun leveled. But he made a mistake. He looked at the empty floor where he thought she was. Claire wasn't on the floor. She had vaulted onto the back of the bed frame, perching like a gargoyle. She launched herself at him. It was a move she had learned in a muddy pit in Coronado. She wrapped her legs around his neck, driving the scalpel down. He blocked it with his forearm, the blade slicing through his sleeve. He was strong, terrifyingly strong. He threw her off, sending her crashing into the crash cart. Drugs and needles scattered everywhere. Claire groaned, air knocked out of her. The assassin stepped forward, raising the gun for a kill shot. "Goodbye, nurse," he whispered. Bang! The sound was deafening in the small room. The assassin's head snapped back. He crumpled to the floor. Claire looked up, gasping. Jack was sitting up in bed, his face grey with exhaustion. In his hand was a backup Glock 19 that he had pulled from the ankle holster of his discarded pants pile on the chair. Smoke drifted from the barrel. He slumped back, dropping the gun. "I told you, I hate needles." Claire scrambled to her feet, kicking the assassin's gun away. She checked the hallway. Silence. "We have to move," Claire said, rushing to Jack. He wasn't alone. "That was just the point, man." "I can't walk," Jack groaned. "I know," Claire said, grabbing the sheets. "So I'm going to drag you." She keyed her earpiece again, hoping the backup channel worked. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Sierra 1. Hostiles in the ICU. Admiral, do you copy?" A voice crackled through the static. It wasn't the Admiral. "We copy. Sierra 1. This is Hunter 2-1. We are on the roof. The stairwells are compromised. You need to get to the helipad. Now." Claire looked at Jack. He was fading fast. The toxin was winning. And now they had a hit squad hunting them in a pitch-black hospital. "Okay, Jack," Claire said, hoisting his heavy arm over her shoulder. "Time to go for a ride." As they stumbled into the dark hallway, Claire saw a flashlight beam cut through the gloom at the far end of the corridor. Then another. Then 3 more. They were trapped. Claire looked at the elevator. Dead. The stairs. Compromised. She looked at the laundry chute. "Oh no," Jack muttered, seeing where she was looking. "No way." "It goes to the basement," Claire said. "The boiler room connects to the service elevator, which runs on a separate generator. It's the only way up to the roof." "I'm a SEAL," Jack protested weakly. "I don't do laundry chutes." "You do today, Princess." She shoved him into the metal opening and jumped in after him, just as bullets began to chew up the wall where they had been standing. The fall was dark, chaotic, and smelled of bleach and soiled linen. Claire hit the pile of laundry bags first, the impact knocking the wind out of her. Jack landed a second later, a heavy, dead weight that groaned in agony. The laundry chute had dumped them into the sub-basement sorting room, a cavernous, concrete space filled with industrial rolling carts and the deafening hum of the massive boiler units. Jack said. Claire scrambled out of the pile, her flashlight flickering. Still. Breathing. Jack wheezed. Ribs. Not so good. Claire checked his pupils. Pinpricks. The neurotoxin was accelerating. His movements were becoming jerky, his speech slurring. The anticholinergic drugs she had pushed upstairs were fighting a losing battle against the sheer volume of poison in his system. We need to get to the service elevator, Claire whispered, helping him up. It's on the north wall, behind the incinerator. Mouse. Jack grabbed her arm. His grip was weak. Leave me. You can make it. I'm dead weight. Shut up, she hissed, looping his arm over her shoulder again. I didn't carry you out of the Argandab Valley just to let you die in a pile of dirty sheets in Seattle. They moved through the shadows of the basement. The power was still out, the emergency lights casting long, dancing shadows against the steam pipes. Clang. A metal door opened somewhere above them. Footsteps on the metal grate stairs. Heavy boots. Fast. They're inside, Claire noted. 3 of them, maybe 4. She scanned the room. It was a kill box. No cover except the linen carts. Jack, I need you to hide, she said, pushing him behind a row of industrial washers. What are you doing? I'm going hunting. Claire slipped into the darkness. She didn't have a gun. She had a scalpel, a roll of medical tape she'd grabbed from the crash cart, and the environment. The first mercenary reached the bottom of the stairs. He wore night vision goggles, NVGs. That was bad. He could see her heat signature. Claire spotted a steam valve next to her head. It was old, rusted, and wrapped in danger high pressure tape. She waited. She slowed her breathing, lowering her heart rate, a trick a sniper had taught her once. Be the rock. Be the nothing. The mercenary moved closer, his suppressed rifle sweeping the room. The laser dot danced over the washers. Now. Claire ripped the medical tape off the valve handle and kicked it open with her heel. Hiss! A jet of superheated steam blasted out at 300 psi, creating a white-hot wall of fog. The mercenary screamed as the heat bloomed in his NVGs, blinding him instantly with thermal overload. Claire moved through the steam like a wraith. She came in low, sweeping his leg. As he fell, she didn't hesitate. She used the heavy brass nozzle of a fire hose she had uncoiled, swinging it with all her strength. Crack. The mercenary went limp. Claire snatched his radio and his sidearm, a Sig Sauer, P2-26. One down, she whispered into the radio, clicking the transmit button so the other assassins could hear. 3 to go. She's in the boiler room. A voice crackled on the radio. Flush her out, grenades. Move, Jack. Claire sprinted back to him, hauling him up. They scrambled toward the service elevator, just as a flash-bang grenade detonated where they had been standing. The boom was deafening in the enclosed space. Claire's ears rang, but she kept moving, dragging Jack into the open cage of the industrial elevator. She slammed the gate shut and hit the button. Nothing. Power. Override. Jack gasped, pointing to a red lever. Claire yanked the lever. The gears ground together, sparks showering down from the motor. Slowly, agonizingly. The cage began to rise. Bullets pinged off the metal grate beneath their feet. The assassins were firing up at them. "Hold on!" Claire yelled. As they rose past the first floor, she saw the lobby through the grate. It was a war zone. Hospital security was zip-tied on the floor. Men in black tactical gear were patrolling. "This isn't a hit squad," Jack murmured, his eyes rolling back. "It's an invasion force. They want the data. Inside my head." Claire looked at him. "Stay with me. Reaper, we're almost to the roof." But Jack didn't answer. His body went rigid, then began to convulse. The toxin had breached the blood-brain barrier. He was seizing. The service elevator lurched to a halt on the roof level. The storm was raging outside, rain lashing sideways, thunder shaking the building. Claire dragged Jack out onto the wet concrete of the maintenance bay. He was foaming at the mouth, his seizure violent and terrifying. "Come on, Jack. Breathe." She rolled him onto his side. She needed Valium. She needed an airway. She had neither. "Think. Holloway. Think." She screamed at herself. She checked his pockets. Nothing but the stolen pistol and a tactical knife. She checked her own pockets. The adrenaline pen. She had one left from the crash cart. It wouldn't stop the seizure, but it would keep his heart from stopping during the convulsions. She jammed it into his thigh. Jack gasped, his body arching, then slumping. The seizure stopped. He was unconscious, his breathing shallow. "Don't die on me now," she wept, wiping the rain from his face. "Touching," a voice said. Claire spun around, raising the Sig Sauer. Standing by the helipad door, sheltered from the rain, was Dr. Gregory Alston. But he wasn't alone. Next to him stood a tall man in a tailored suit, holding a large umbrella. Alston looked terrified. The man in the suit looked bored. "Doctor! Alston!" Claire blinked, confused. "What are you doing?" I didn't have a choice," Alston stammered, his hands shaking. "They said they'd kill me. They said they just wanted the patient." "Put the gun down." "Nurse Holloway." The man in the suit said. His accent was European. Refined. "My name is Kruger. I represent the organization, Mr. O'Connell stole from... We don't want to kill him. We just want the hard drive he's swallowed." Claire's eyes widened. "Swallowed. You didn't know." Kruger smiled. "Micro SD, encased in a ceramic pill. He's a walking vault. That's why we couldn't just blow up the hospital. We need to extract it surgically." He gestured to Alston. "And since the good doctor here is a surgeon, he's going to perform the procedure. Right here. Right now." "He's septic," Claire shouted. "If you cut him open in this rain, he dies." "Collateral damage." Kruger shrugged. "Drop the gun, or my sniper on the adjacent roof drops you." A red laser dot appeared on Claire's chest. She froze. She was exposed, no cover. Jack was unconscious at her feet. "Kick the gun over," Kruger ordered. Claire slowly crouched, placing the gun on the wet concrete. She kicked it toward them. "Good," Kruger nodded. "Now, step away from the patient. Alston, get to work." Alston walked forward, holding a scalpel. He was crying. "I'm sorry. Holloway, I'm so sorry. I have a mortgage. I have a reputation. You're a coward, Gregory," Claire spat. "You're going to cut a man open like a fish to save your own skin." "I have to," Alston yelled, his voice cracking. He knelt beside Jack, raising the knife. Claire looked at the laser dot on her chest. She looked at Alston. She looked at Jack. She closed her eyes and took a breath. "The sniper is on the east tower." The wind is gusting 40 knots from the south. He has to compensate. She opened her eyes. "Alston, look at me," she commanded, using her head nurse voice, the one that stopped residents in their tracks. Alston hesitated, looking up. "You cut him. You kill him. And when he dies, they kill you. You know that. Right. You're a loose end." "She's lying," Kruger snapped. "Cut him. Do it! Gregory!" Claire screamed. "Or are you going to let a nurse tell you what to do for the rest of your short life?" Alston's hand trembled. He looked at Kruger. He looked at the knife. Then, with a scream of pure terror, "Doctor!" Alston threw the scalpel at Kruger. It was a pathetic throw. It bounced harmlessly off Kruger's suit. "Idiot!" Kruger sighed. He raised his own pistol and shot Alston in the leg. Alston went down screaming. "Kill the girl," Kruger said into his earpiece. Claire didn't wait. She dove, not away from the laser, but toward Jack. Crack. The sniper's bullet chipped the concrete where her head had been a millisecond before. The wind had pushed the round just enough. Claire grabbed Jack's tactical vest. She pulled the pin on a flashbang grenade she had found on his belt, one she hadn't noticed before. She didn't throw it at Kruger. She threw it straight up into the air. Bang! The blinding flash washed out the sniper's scope on the other building. Claire rolled, grabbing the pistol Alston had dropped, not the scalpel, but a small backup revolver he carried for protection. She fired 3 shots. 2 hit Kruger in the chest. He looked down, surprised, before toppling over the edge of the roof. The 3rd shot she saved. She pointed it at the sky. The reverberation of the gunshot that killed Kruger hadn't even faded before the red laser dot on Claire's chest began to dance erratically. The sniper on the adjacent tower, blinded by the flashbang grenade Claire had hurled skyward, was firing blindly now. Crack, crack, whiz. Bullets chipped the concrete inches from Jack's head. "Cover!" Claire screamed, throwing her body over Jack's massive frame. She pressed her face into the wet. Cold nylon of his tactical vest, shielding his vital organs with her own spine. She wasn't the mouse anymore. She was the barrier. Then, the storm clouds above them were torn apart by a sound that vibrated in the marrow of her bones. It wasn't thunder. It was the distinct, rhythmic roar of General Electric T700 engines running at maximum torque. A shadow fell over the roof, darker than the storm. A MH-60M Black Hawk, painted in matte stealth black, crested the building's edge like a prehistoric predator. The downdraft was immense, instantly flattening the rain into a horizontal sheet of spray and blowing the sniper's aim completely off target. The side doors of the bird were open. A minigun spun up with a terrifying electronic whine, the gunner locking onto the adjacent tower where the sniper was perched. A short, controlled burst, roar, silenced the threat instantly. Ropes deployed from the Black Hawk's belly, hitting the wet deck with a heavy slap. Go, go, go! 6 operators in full combat gear slid down the fast ropes, their boots hitting the roof with precise, practiced thuds. They moved with a fluidity that made the chaos of the storm look like slow motion. They formed a perimeter instantly, weapons raised, scanning for threats. One team moved to secure the stairwell door. Another moved toward Dr. Alston, who was curled in a fetal ball near the edge, clutching his bleeding leg and sobbing into the rainwater. The team leader, a man whose presence commanded the very air around him, marched straight toward Claire. He flipped up his night vision visor, revealing the steel-grey eyes of Admiral Owen Hayes. "You certainly know how to throw a party. Senior Chief." Hayes shouted over the deafening roar of the rotors, extending a gloved hand. Claire didn't take it. She was staring at Jack. "He's crashing!" she screamed, her voice raw. "Respiratory failure. The toxin has paralyzed his diaphragm." Hayes's expression shifted from relief to command instantly. He tapped his comms. "Get the pararescue jumpers on the deck now. We have a code blue." Two medics from the chopper sprinted over, carrying a collapsible litter. They didn't ask questions. They saw Claire's hands on the patient and fell into her rhythm. Together, they hoisted Jack's limp, heavy body onto the litter and ran toward the waiting helicopter. Claire scrambled up to follow, but a hand grabbed her ankle. She looked down. "Doctor." Alston was looking up at her, his face a mask of terror and confusion. Rain and blood smeared his expensive glasses. "Holloway," he choked out. "Who? What are you?" Claire looked at the man who had belittled her for 6 months. The man who had called her slow, weak, and incompetent. The man who was willing to butcher a hero to save his own career. She leaned down, her face inches from his. "I'm the nurse you ignored. Gregory," she said, her voice cutting through the storm. "And you're the patient who's going to prison." She stood up, turned her back on him, and sprinted toward the Black Hawk. As the helicopter lifted off, banking hard to the left to escape the city skyline, the cabin became a chaotic trauma room. The red tactical lights bathed everything in a surreal, bloody glow. "No pulse," the flight medic yelled, his fingers on Jack's carotid artery. "He's in a systole. Start compressions," Claire ordered, straddling Jack's hips in the cramped cabin. She locked her elbows and began the rhythmic, brutal work of CPR. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Push 1 milligram epinephrine," she shouted. "We're out of epi," the medic yelled back. "We used the last on the extraction team." "Then give me the defibrillator. We need to shock him out of the paralytic block." "You can't shock a systole." "Claire," the medic argued. "Watch me," Claire roared. "It's not true a systole. It's a neurotoxic vagal shutdown. His heart is stunned. Not dead charge to 200. The medic hesitated for a split second, looked at the fire in Claire's eyes, the eyes of a woman who had fought death in the dirt of Kandahar, and won and charged the paddles. "Clear, thump." Jack's body arched off the litter. "Nothing," the medic said. "Still flatline. Charge to 300. Claire was sweating now, tears mixing with the rain on her face. Her arms burned. Her mind flashed back 5 years to a dusty road in Afghanistan, to a kid named Miller bleeding out in her arms because she had been 2 seconds too slow. Not again, she thought. I will not let the dark take another one. Not him. Clear. Thump. Silence. Just the roar of the engines and the vibration of the airframe. Claire stopped compressions. She leaned down, grabbing Jack's tactical vest with both hands, shaking him. "Jack O'Connell, listen to me!" she screamed into his ear, her voice breaking. "You do not get to die on my watch. You owe me $20, you stubborn son of a bitch. Wake up." She slammed her fist into the center of his chest, a precordial thump, a desperate, old-school move. Beep. The monitor spiked. Beep. Beep. A jagged, ugly rhythm appeared on the screen. Sinus bradycardia, but a rhythm. Jack gasped. It was a horrible, retching sound, like a man drowning in air. His eyes flew open, wide and terrified, staring up at the red-lit ceiling of the helicopter. He blinked, focusing on the woman hovering over him. "Easy. Reaper," Claire sobbed, collapsing back against the fuselage wall, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "I got you. You're back." Jack tried to speak. He coughed, winced, and managed a crooked, weak grin. You hit hard. "Mouse," he wheezed. "You are dead." She wiped her eyes, laughing through the tears. "I had to knock some sense into you." Jack reached out a hand. Claire took it, squeezing tight. "Told you," Jack whispered, his eyes closing as exhaustion took him. "Best. Medic. In the Navy." 6 months later, the sun dipped low over the Pacific Ocean, painting the waves in hues of burnt orange and violet. The air at the Naval Amphibious Base Coronado smelled of salt and jasmine, a sharp contrast to the antiseptic and rain of Seattle. Claire Halloway sat on the tailgate of a beat-up Ford pickup truck parked near the edge of the training beach. She wasn't wearing scrubs. She was wearing her dress khakis, the gold chevrons of a senior chief petty officer gleaming on her collar. Deep in thought, she looked up. Jack O'Connell was walking toward her across the sand. He moved well. The physical therapy had been brutal, but he was a SEAL. Brutal was his baseline. He held 2 cold bottles of beer. "Just watching the new class," Claire said, nodding toward the line of miserable recruits crawling through the surf in the distance. "They look so young." "We were never that young," Jack said, handing her a bottle. He hopped up onto the tailgate beside her. They sat in companionable silence for a long time, watching the waves crash. "I heard about Alston," Jack said, breaking the silence. "Oh," Claire took a sip. "Plea deal. 10 years for medical malpractice and aiding a terrorist organization." He gave up the whole syndicate network to avoid treason charges. "Kruger's people are being rolled up by the CIA as we speak." "Couldn't happen to a nicer guy," Claire said dryly. Jack turned to look at her. The setting sun caught the scars on his face, but the darkness that used to haunt his eyes was gone. "And what about you? Claire Admiral Hayes offered you a teaching position at Bethesda. Cushy gig, no mud, no bullets." Claire smiled, looking down at her boots. "I thought about it. I did. It's safe. But safe is boring." She laughed softly. "I turned it down. I'm staying with the squadron. Hayes appointed me lead medical trainer for DevGru. I figure, someone has to teach you door kickers how to put on a tourniquet without fainting." Jack grinned, raising his bottle. "To the ghost. To the Reaper." She clinked her bottle against his. Jack reached into his pocket. "Oh, before I forget." He pulled out a crisp, folded $20 bill and placed it on the tailgate between them. "Debt paid," he said. Claire looked at the money, then at him. "You remembered." "I remember everything. Mouse, especially the people who pull me out of the fire." Claire picked up the 20, folded it into a paper airplane, and launched it toward the ocean. The wind caught it, carrying it out over the surf. "Now we're even," she said. The whistle blew down on the beach. The recruits scrambled, shouting in unison. The world kept turning. The wars kept coming. But as the sun finally slipped below the horizon, Claire Halloway wasn't invisible anymore. She was exactly where she belonged, standing watch in the company of lions. And that is the incredible, true-to-life saga of Claire Halloway. From the overlooked, quiet nurse scrubbing floors, to the combat veteran who took down a mercenary squad to save her brother in arms. It's a powerful reminder that the quietest people in the room often have the loudest stories to tell. You never know who is standing next to you, what battles they fought, what scars they hide, and what they are capable of when pushed to the edge. It makes you wonder if the crisis hit right now. Who in your life would step up if this story had your heart racing? Do me a huge favor. Hit that like button. It helps us find more incredible stories like this. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss part 2 of our Hidden Heroes series coming next week. And tell me in the comments, would you want Claire Holloway as your nurse? Let's talk down there. Stay safe, everyone.